Welcome back to today's explainer. All right, let's jump straight into this. Imagine you're driving your car down the street, but suddenly there are no painted lanes, no stop signs, literally zero traffic lights. That is kind of what navigating the open water is like, right? It's basically a massive, totally unstructured intersection. But there's a vital, globally recognized system that keeps it from turning into absolute chaos out there. And today, we're going to demystify one of its most critical pieces, Navigation Rule 15, which is formally known as the crossing situation.
So think about this for a second. This is the ultimate, high-stakes question for anyone out on the water. Two boats are crossing paths. Who stops? Seriously, ask yourself that right now. Because if you guess wrong out there, well, it's not just a minor fender bender. A collision at sea can be catastrophic. And that's exactly why mariners need a totally airtight, universal rule to figure out exactly who has the right of way and who has to hit the brakes.
Here's how we're breaking it down today. 1. The crossing situation. 2. The starboard rule. 3. Avoiding collision. And finally, 4. The inland river exception.
Crossing situation, Rule 15 overview.
Okay, before we start pointing fingers about who has the right of way, we actually have to know who this rule applies to. Rule 3 of the Coast Guard's navigation rules defines a power-driven vessel as any vessel propelled by machinery. So, long story short, Rule 15 is specifically 100% for motorized vessels. If you're chilling in a sailboat just using the wind, or you're out paddling a kayak, different rules apply to you. But the absolute second you fire up an engine, boom, you are a power-driven vessel, and this rule is now your responsibility.
Picture this. You're at the helm of your motorboat, just cruising across a wide-open bay. Suddenly, you spot another power-driven vessel off in the distance. Now, they aren't passing you from behind, and they aren't coming straight at you head-on. Instead, your paths are essentially tracing this giant invisible X on the water. You're crossing, and as those invisible lines start to converge, a very real risk of collision starts brewing. That exact moment, that's when Rule 15 kicks in.
2. The starboard rule, who gives way?
All right, here's how we solve the puzzle. Straight from the Coast Guard's legal text, it says, quote, "The vessel which has the other on her own starboard side shall keep out of the way," end quote. Now, just a quick reminder, starboard just means the right side of the boat when you're facing forward. This one sentence, it's pretty elegant actually, is basically the foundational law of the sea for a crossing scenario.
Let's translate that dense legal jargon into what you actually do on the water. Think of an unmarked intersection in a neighborhood. The universal rule is you yield to the car on your right, yeah? Well, the water works exactly the same way. If you look out the right side, your starboard side, and you see another vessel crossing your path, they have the right of way. You are the give-way vessel. But if you look to your left, your port side, and see a boat, you maintain the right of way. You're what's called the stand-on vessel. It's that simple. The boat on the right always wins the crossing.
3. Avoiding collision, required actions.
But hey, knowing the rule is only half the battle, right? If you find yourself in the give-way seat, meaning that other boat is over on your starboard side, you have two absolute mandates under Rules 15 and 16. Number 1, you must take early and substantial action to keep clear. Basically, do not wait until the last possible second to turn. And number 2, and this is a really massive point, you have to avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. Trying to just gun your engine to cut in front of them, that is a huge violation. The rules demand you slow down, stop, or turn to pass safely behind their stern.
Okay, but what if you're the one with the right of way, the stand-on vessel? Well, your job is just as critical, and it's strictly laid out in Rule 17. You must keep your course and speed. You have to be completely 100% predictable. Think about it. The giveaway vessel is actively doing math in their head, trying to figure out how to pass safely behind you. If you suddenly slam on the brakes or take a sharp turn, you might literally cause the exact collision they were trying to avoid. You only take evasive action if it becomes dangerously obvious that the other boat isn't paying attention and isn't going to stop.
4. Inland exception, Rule 15b.
All right, brace yourselves, because just when you think you've completely mastered the law of the sea, the inland rules drop a massive plot twist. Our standard Rule 15 is to yield to starboard, but paragraph B of the inland rules changes everything. It says that a power-driven vessel crossing a river shall keep out of the way of a power-driven vessel ascending or descending the river. Did you catch what word is missing there? Starboard. It's not mentioned at all. If you are crossing a river, you are suddenly at the absolute bottom of the pecking order. The vessel moving up or down that river dictates the rules, period. You have to yield to them, whether they're on your port or your starboard side.
So, you're probably wondering, where exactly does this exception actually apply? Well, the inland rules specifically list a few spots for domestic mariners: the Great Lakes, the Western Rivers, and a few specific waters designated by the Secretary. So if you're boating in any of these regions, you absolutely cannot just blindly rely on the standard starport rule. It's a whole different ballgame.
Let's ground this with a real-world example straight from the Rule 3 definitions. The Western Rivers legally include the mighty Mississippi River, its tributaries, the South Pass and the Southwest Pass. So imagine a gigantic, heavy tugboat pushing a massive load of barges down the Mississippi. If you're in a little motorboat trying to just dart across from the east bank to the west bank, well, even if that giant tugboat is on your port side, you absolutely do not have the right of way. The river exception completely overrides the starboard rule here. It's all about going with or against the flow of the river.
Which brings us to our final takeaway. I want to leave you with this question to chew on. How do the nuances of geography completely change the rules of safety on the water? The big lesson from today's explainer is that maritime rules, they aren't just some boring, static list of laws to cram for a test. They're a living, dynamic system. As an operator, you have to constantly adapt your understanding based on the specific waters you're in. Knowing Rule 15 is essential, for sure, but knowing where you are applying Rule 15, that is what actually keeps you safe out there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and as always, stay curious.